Welcome to this overview of our workload planning system. When you first visit the Workload Planner, you'll be greeted by a page like this. The Workload Planner can be configured with your university's single sign-on service so that you can use the credentials that you use for logging into your email to get access to the service. When you log into the service, it will show you a list of actions that you can take. You can see in this example that I can allocate workload, update student numbers, and view reports. The first part we will look into is allocating workload. From here, we can select previous year to fix mistakes made in the past. We can select current year to update any information about this year, or in most cases, we'll select next year so we can add new workload. We are going to select current year so you can see an example of what the system looks like when it's populated. As you can see, this shows me a list of the subject groups that I can allocate to. From this list, I'm going to look into the physics subject group. Now I can see all of the actions that I can perform for this subject group. I can allocate by academic, I can allocate by module, or I can balance workload between multiple people. This is configurable to your unique business need. We'll look at each of these in detail, but first we're going to look into allocating by academic. The first thing you see is a graph of all the people in the subject group. You can see that all of their workload is grouped by teaching, research, scholarship, admin, and other. You can hover over the segments to see more detail about them. The red line near the top of the graph represents a standard full-time contract. I can select an academic to allocate to just by selecting their name on the graph. When you do so, you can see their workload in much greater detail, along with an overview of their details and their workload. These are further subgrouped in teaching into trimester, module, and then ordered by their activity types. This is also in graph form so they can see which modules and allocations represent the most of their workload. You can update or delete any of these allocations at any time by selecting them on the graph. Teaching, scholarship, research, admin, and other are all represented by different colors so you can clearly identify which is which. When you select a new user from the graph, it updates the detailed workload with that person's workload. As you can tell from both graphs, this new user has no allocations. So let's allocate some new workload to them. When you click the Allocate button, the top graph disappears so that we can focus on this individual's workload. And a new tabbed layout appears at the bottom of their graph. The sections are the types of allocations that we can allocate to them. These include teaching, academic support tuition, research, institutional roles, other tasks, and local arrangements. But these are configurable given your circumstances. Teaching is pre-selected and you can see a list of modules that I can allocate to. In this case, the list is very long, so I'm going to use the search function. Since this is a member of staff from the physics subject group, I'm going to search for physics. I can see from the graphs who is currently allocated these modules. You can see from the first few modules that these are quite heavily allocated, but advanced quantum, nuclear and particle physics has less allocations than the others, so I'm going to add some allocations to that. When I click allocate, a new list appears. If I select this list, a list of standard university activities will be displayed for me. Activities that start with T are for teaching. For the sake of this presentation, we're just going to look at the first three activities. They are T1, lectures with existing course material, T2, lectures with inherited course material, and T3, lectures with new course materials. Initially, I'm going to select T1 just to show an example, and I'm going to add just 20 contact hours. When I do so, you can see that the number of allocated hours underneath updates. Contact hours represents time in contact with students. Each activity has a tariff that's multiplied by the number of contact hours. In the case of T1, existing course material, the tariff is 2, and so we get 40 hours for 20 hours of contact. This means that for every hour of contact I have with students, I have 1 additional hour for prep. If I update the activity to T3, new course materials, the allocated hours also updates to 140. This is because the tariff for new course materials is higher than the tariff for existing course materials. For every 1 hour of contact time for new course material, you get 6 hours of preparation time. Custom allocations and tariffs like these can be created for your organization. Let's make this allocation now. You can see when we do so, we get a confirmation that the allocation was successful. You can also see that the graph updates with the new allocations. Another type of allocation we can make is academic support tuition. This is essentially office hours that lecturers have where students can get help out of class time. This is a flat allocation based on the number of students. Let's add 50 students. It shows up as teaching in the graph when it is allocated. The third type of allocation that we can make is research. Research can be recorded in two ways. The first way, number of hours, and the second way, the percentage of the person's entire workload. Research, similar to teaching, has several activities that you can allocate for. In this case, I'm just going to allocate 200 hours. You can provide an optional description as well. If you do record a description, it will show up next to the allocation, making it easier to identify. When I allocate, the graph is again updated. The fourth type of allocation in this example is institutional roles. These are roles held within the university, like dean, head of department, subject group heads, that are recorded as workload. There are two types of roles in this example, fixed and flexible. Fixed roles have a required amount of workload every year. Flexible roles, on the other hand, can have any amount of allocation or no allocations. Fixed allocations allow us to have indicators like unallocated, partially allocated, and fully allocated. Let's record 100 hours against the Athena Swan role. This role is about recording and evangelizing gender diversity in the workplace. Once allocated, the role shows up under admin in the graph. Fifth in our list of allocation types is other tasks. This allocation type is about recording workload that isn't represented within the university's framework for allocations. As I start typing in the box, an autocomplete will show me similar other tasks that have been used in the past. I'll add 18 hours and add a description. If I try to allocate another task with a task title that has not been used in the past, the system will notify me that I cannot create the allocation without adding in the new task type. Once I create the task type, I can now allocate against it. This encourages people to use already created task types so that we can easier group the information around how much time is being used for each one. The sixth and final type of allocation that we can make in this example is local arrangements. Local arrangements are very different to other types of allocations. Local arrangements actually remove workload hours from the total number of workload hours that a person can do in a given year. These are locally agreed by the manager and include things like paternity and maternity leave. After you click Allocate, you can see that the total number of hours for this individual has decreased from 1613 to 1313. I can again update or remove any of these allocations by just clicking them on the graph. That was a quick overview of some of the features when allocating by academic. Now we're going to look into balancing allocations between academics. As you can see, we are greeted with the same graph that you see when allocating by academics. But this time we can select more than one academic and transfer workload between them. This is a powerful tool that allows subject group heads to ensure that workload is evenly distributed throughout their subject group. This individual is new to the organisation and has requested that they be allowed to focus just on teaching for this year, so we're going to transfer their formative assessment to another individual. When we transfer, we can see a preview of how it will affect each individual's workload before we make the transfer. In this case, I'm removing all 20 hours from the first individual and adding it to the second. As always, we'll get a confirmation of what's changed and the graphs will update to reflect the new information. I can easily change the person I'm transferring allocations to by clicking them on the graph. This has been an overview of some of the key features of the Workload Planner. If you're interested in seeing more features like allocating by module, updating student numbers, and a report service, please contact us and we'll be happy to arrange a demo.